only 5 years left, right? So, all right, so bond value versus years remaining to maturity. So in this example, we're gonna assume that a bond that was issued 20 years ago and now has 10 years to maturity, meaning 10 years have passed by, right? What would happen to its value over time if the market, which is also the required rate of return, market rate, required rate of return, discount rate, they all mean the same. Okay, market rate, discount rate, required rate of return remained at 10%, 13%, or 7%. Okay, so what happens to the bond value throughout the life if the market rate fluctuated?
Up and down, up and down.
Okay, so if the market rate was less than the coupon rate, does it make sense that the value of the bond is going down over time? Can anyone explain why?
The market rate is,
The market rate is less than the coupon rate.
Okay.
Remember what I said.
When you get it at a certain rate,
Coupon rate's higher
because you
than
get it, you buy it at a certain amount, and then the market goes
Exactly.
down, and then it starts to go
So it was
down.
at a premium when it was issued.
Right.
Remember when I said if it's early in the life, the value of the bond is greater.
Mhm.
But as time passes by, your spread doesn't mean as much because there's little left to be collected.
yeah.
So what was once worth a premium of say $13.50, because you're passing by and not benefiting from the interest collection, it's going down. Remember I said at the end, it's going to be worth par because there's no difference now in the rates. Same thing goes for if the market rate is greater than the coupon rate, you're at a big discount early in the life of the bond. But as time passes, that discount becomes less and less and less and less until you hit par. If the market rate stayed the same as the coupon rate, it's always at par. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
So market rate is greater than the coupon rate, it's premium, but it's at most premium early in the life. And it slowly comes down as you reach the maturity. Discount is at the biggest discount early in the life, and the discount goes away slowly, slowly until you get par. Ultimately, all roads lead to par at the end of maturity because the rate doesn't matter anymore. You've collected the differences.
That's definitely gonna be on the quiz.
It's funny. Alright, so any questions on this, or is it pretty clear?
That's pretty clear.
Alright. Alright, so at maturity, the value of any bond must equal its par value, okay? So the value of a premium bond would decrease to 1,000. The value of a discount bond would increase to 1,000, and a par bond stays at 1,000 if the market value is the same as the par or the coupon rate, okay?
How does that work with the sinking fund? Is that just kind of all finished in there?
Yeah, there's so many provisions there.
Okay.
You have to like just take it step by step, but obviously it matters when that call provision can be exercised. It matters how much of a difference there is in the coupon rate, and there's also a call premium, right? They have to be more than the par, so you have to factor it in. Okay. All right. So what's yield to maturity? So like YTM, right? YTM, yield to maturity, is the rate of return earned on a bond that is held to maturity. This is called a promised yield. So it assumes that the bond will not default. Okay, I need you to understand that the yield to maturity is usually the same as the market rate, and we'll explain why. So the yield to maturity is the rate of return earned on a bond that's held to maturity. I want you to understand something. Say someone has a bond that has a coupon rate that is less than the market rate. Okay, so their bond is worth less than par. We know that. Now you want to buy that bond. You're obviously not going to give them par. You're going to give them what? The discounted price.
Discount.
But the yield to maturity, which is going to be the ultimate return that you own, will end up being the market rate, because when you value their bond, you use the market rate to discount their coupon rate. So if you buy their bond at a discount, if you hold that bond to the end of its life, your rate of return is going to equal the market rate, because that's what you use to value their bond. Does that make sense? That part?
Market
So-
rate at that specific time.
Exactly, yes. Very good, yeah. So just keep that in mind. But all right, so yield to maturity is the rate of return earned on a bond that's held to maturity. All right, so now this is going to some questions here. The yield to maturity on a 10-year, 9% annual coupon bond with a par value of $1,000 selling at a discount of $887, okay? So if they're giving you the coupon rate, they're giving you the par value, they're giving you the current bond price of 887, right? What are you looking for?
Market?
Market rate, exactly. So remember I said you're basically gonna earn on a coupon what the market rate is, because that market rate is what you're using to value, okay? All right, so let's find that. So remember this formula in valuing a bond. You are taking all the interest payments. Interest payments, again, in this case, 9% interest on 1,000 par. So the interest payments we know is $90 per year, okay? So that is your interest payment, and you're gonna discount that by a market rate, okay? A discount rate. So, and you're also gonna discount the maturity payment. We know the maturity payment is the par value, that's $1,000. So you're gonna discount the interest payments, and you're gonna discount the maturity value to a bond value of 887, right? So what you're looking for is what the discount rate is, what the market rate is. So if we do on Excel, I started this better be right, but so let's do
So this won't be PV this time.
no, it'll be rate. We do rate. We have the number of periods. Everyone remember what that was? Was it 10?
10?
I think it was 10, right? Payment was 90, right?
Yeah.
Present value was 887, right? And future value was 1,000.
Your rate is supposed to come out, right?
Okay, so we're finding what the rate is. You're trying to find the implicit rate that was used to calculate the bond value. Okay? So you had terms for the bond. You had a stated coupon rate of 9%. Okay? No different from what we talked about previously. You had a stated coupon rate of 9%. You have a term bond of 10 years. You have a bond value of 887. Where you're trying to find, you have par value of 1,000. You're trying to find what the implicit market rate is that was used in valuing the bond. Okay? So we do that by using our rate formula, right? So we put in rate. You can use Excel on the quiz also. You're gonna need Excel. Okay, so just pay attention for now. I know you guys are looking, but you wanna find the rate. So you're not looking for present value. So you type in equals rate,
Right.
and then you fill in the parameters. You know it's a 10-year bond, right? So that's the number of periods. You know your interest payment per year is 9% on the par value of 1,000. That's $90 per year. You know the present value of the bond they're telling you is selling for 887, and you know the future value, which is the par value, the maturity value, is 1,000. You put all those parameters in. Now what you're finding is what rate was used to arrive at a present value of a bond to be $887 with all the other parameters given. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you find the rate, you put it through, and it's 10.91%. You look at that, you get to 10.91%. That is your yield to maturity. That is the market rate that was used in this call. Okay? So again, I'm just gonna repeat this. Once you find that market rate, now you can answer the question, all right? Based off the rates. Forget it, we know in this case it's a discount rate, right? Because it's under that.
That's 10 years, right? Like you said.
Yeah, I'll wait for you to do it. So. Here, go ahead. Take this.
So,
Yeah.
so it's 10 years, comma. You said 9. So, hey.
The market rate is at a discount, which in this case it was, right? The market rate is greater than the coupon rate, right? 10.9 is greater than 9, so it was selling at a discount. If the coupon rate is equal to the market rate, bond sells at par. Coupon rate is greater than the market rate, bond sells at a premium. And keep in mind, if the market rate rises, we know the value of the bond falls. If market rate drops, we know the value of the bond increases. If the price remains the same, price is equal to the par at maturity, whether it was a premium bond or a discount bond all its life. At the end of the life, it's par. Yeah, see, I had to correct it here. I'm telling you, these slides are shit. Alright, so find yield to maturity if the price were 1,134. So in the previous example, it was a discount, right? Now they're telling you use $1,134.20. So we know it's a premium bond, right? Because it's worth more than the par of 1,000. So now we're gonna find the rate. Okay? So
So when there's 887, you just put the 1,000.
yeah, so we're gonna find the rate. So 887, 1,000. Right. So it's basically this. But it's 1,137. So is it 7.05? 7.08. We'll call it that. All right. So 7.1134.20. 7.08. So we know our required rate of return, our market rate, our discount rate is 7.08%. The market rate is less than the coupon rate. That means it's selling at a premium, okay? So it sells at a premium because the coupon rate of 9% is greater than the market rate of 7.08, so the bond's value is greater than its par value, okay? Definition, so we can break down the total yield to maturity into two components. We can have a current yield and a capital gains yield. Current yield is the annual coupon payment over the current price. The capital gains yield is the change in price over the beginning price, okay? Okay, so you wanna break this down. So our number previously, what was it? No, this is on the other one, 10.91, right? That was the original.
Yeah.
10.91. So yield to maturity is 10.91. Now we want to say what is due to the current yield and what is due to the capital gains yield, okay? Because it's two components. So we can find the current yield. We know that the current yield is the coupon payment, which is 9% on the $1,000 par, that's $90, over the current price. We know the current price is $887. So we divide that current coupon rate over the price of the bond, we get a current yield of 10.15%. Okay? So how would we find the capital gains yield? Anybody? If our yield to maturity is made up of the current yield and the capital gains
You subtract
yield,
the two, right?
exactly. Yeah, you take the yield to maturity of 10.91, you back out the current yield of 10.15. The difference is your capital gains yield. So that's 10.91 minus 10.15. So 0.76% is the capital gains yield, okay? And you can do that for any year, you just have to calculate the, the metrics. All right, now we're gonna get into like semantics, right? We're gonna get into the frequency of, but we pretty much covered most of the, information, but in terms of the valuation of bonds. So we said semi-annual bonds. They're different from annual bonds because they're paying what more frequently? They're paying
Twice.
interest more frequently, right? Not that they're paying, think of it like this, if it's a
Yeah,
semi-annual
twice a year.
bond, twice a year, right? So to get the number of periods, you wanna multiply it by 2, right? To get the nominal rate, you wanna divide by 2 to get the periodic rate, because if you're paying twice a year, your rate, which is stated on an annual basis, you wanna divide it by 2. And then you wanna divide that annual interest payment by 2 to get the payment. Okay, so the same way that we looked at this bond, right? So we said this was an annual paying bond, not semi-annual. If they were semi-annual, our periods are not 10, they are what?
12 or 2. Oh, you said semi-annual.
Yeah, so that means it's twice
Twice,
as
so it's
often,
twice.
right? If you're annual versus semi-annual, you're gonna get paid twice as often,
Yeah.
right, twice a year.
Payments
Now, sorry. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say like payments would be 45, like interest payments.
Excellent,
would be
yeah.
45.
Yeah.
But
Because
the interest rate, that would also be cut in half?
Very good. So your interest rate, will be, cut in half, so that also cuts your.
Oh, you calculate by 9 and divide by 2.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
45.
Alright, so let's go through those. Alright, so in this example, our 10 years became 20 periods. Our interest, our market rate became 6.5 because we divided the 13 by 2. Remember, this case they're saying assume it's 13%. Okay? And our payment it's not, 10% of 1,000 is 100, but then we're not gonna use 100, we're gonna use 50, right? So our payment we divided into, our market rate we divided by 2, and our number of periods we multiply by 2. Okay, so you do that, and the fair value, the future value stays the same, it's just the par value, and you're looking to calculate the present value. Okay, so we can do that on Excel as well. We can do that with a PD function. Okay, so we know our rate is, what was it, 6.5? Was it?
Yeah.
6.5%. We know our number of periods is 20. We know our payment is, what was it?
Is it 45?
50? 50?
Oh.
I think it's 50. And our future value is 1,000. Why is it not over there? 6.5, 20, 50. There's something wrong. So 50, 13, 6.5.
Anyway,
No, it's not. So, is there, cause there's a species? 6.5%. That's the rate. Number of periods is 20. Payment is 50. Future value is 1,000. There you go. 834 is about 72.
So what
834.
got you wrong with it?
What was wrong with it?
I had a negative in front of the payment.
Okay.
So 834, spot 72 is the value of the bond. If you're considering the fact that it's a semi-annual bond, and you fill in the parameters and the formula, you get the number of periods and multiply by 2, because it's twice as often you're paying interest, or being paid interest. Your rate is divided by 2, your payment is divided by 2, so you use that to calculate the present value.
Do we,
I'm going,
is that really like a negative value? Or is that just an
No,
excellent
so
thing?
that's the thing, so,
Like, is that gonna get docked on the quiz if we don't put a negative on it?
No.
Okay.
and also you should realize, the present value of a bond that you're holding is not gonna be a negative value.
It still has, yeah, like, it still has.
It's gonna be a
value.
lesser amount if the rate is not in your favor, but it's never gonna be a negative amount, right? It's still earning interest, so. Alright,
so I didn't get that.
what are your parameters? So you have present value function, right?
Yep.
Okay, what's your rate?
20,
No, your rate is the first figure.
20.
No, 20 is the number of periods. Your rate is 6.5%.
I have it.
Mhm.
6.5,
I
number of periods is
have,
20.
I have 20 first.
So
that's
you
why.
put the rate for the year,
No, you're doing it, you're finding the present value of a bond, considering that it's paying interest twice a year, not once a year. So you do
Right.
that,
So I don't do the 2 times 10?
you do it. So 6.5% is your rate, your number of periods is 20,
Okay,
your payment is 50, because you're earning 10% interest,
I
but you're
have
paying
that.
twice a year,
right.
and your future value is 1,000.
It's 1,000, right?
Yeah.
So my numbers coming out still wrong. Do I need to do the 6.5 first and then put the 20?
Yeah, look at the parameters, it's rate, number of periods, payment, then future value. So it's the rate first,
Well, I was doing the end first, the input.
no, the formula has rate first.
Oh. Look up, Jimmy. So it'd be 6.5.
Percent, is what percent.
That's where I messed up at, right there.
You have to put percent.
Okay. 820.
Yeah, very good. 834, you probably just,
Messing. He's off or something.
6.5%,
Right?
20 periods,
Yep,
$50,
yep,
$1,000.
yep.
What do you have?
820.
Get out.
Let me see. No, the rate goes first.
Oh, that's what it is. And then the 20.
Yeah. When he says rate, it tells you.
Okay.
Okay. 6.5%. Then on the second section, you put 20 instead of 6.5% on the second section. Got it?
Okay, that's what it is.
Would it help you guys if if I did like an office hour on Friday?
Yeah.
To go over more of these problems, or
Yeah,
you guys
yeah.
just better off? It's up to you guys.
Yeah,
On Zoom, not in
Yeah,
person.
Zoom.
Oh, yeah, all right.
that will work. You pick a good time for
You wanna do
you.
it?
Good time for you, you pick a good time.
Alright, so let's do it. But, I mean, I don't mind going over more problems, we can go over more of the details and stuff. Alright, now let's focus on callable bonds and yield to call. Remember what we said? That some bonds have a call provision, right?
Right.
Some issuers, it might say it's a 10-year bond, and it will have the rate and everything, but they say, let's call it, read the fine print, we can call back the bond,
Right.
after a certain period of time.
Right.
So we need to consider that when we calculate our yield. So now let's look at this problem. A 10-year, 10% semi-annual coupon with a $1,000 par value is selling for $1,135, right? With an 8% yield to maturity. It can be called after 5 years at $1,050. I know it's a lot of information. Let's slow it down. I want you to focus on a few things. Alright, so it's a
Yeah,
10-year,
scary.
break it down. When you answer, always when you go with these type of problems, break it down. It's a 10-year bond, so you know your number of periods, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, you know it's 10 years. You know it's a semi-annual coupon, so you know your number of periods is 20.
So it's,
It's 20. 2 times 10, right? Because it's paying
okay, right, it's
interest twice.
20%.
Your 10% semi-annual coupon, if it's semi-annual, that means that 10% is really 5%. Your 1,000 par value is still 1,000. The present value is 1,135. You have your 8% yield to maturity, and you have a call premium of $50, right, on top of the 1,000. So let's just bring it into the problem. So you're gonna fill it in, right? This they do a little.
That's tough because it says 10% semi-annual.
Yeah.
Like, I wanna think it's 20% with that,
Right, that's
with
what
that
I'm
statement.
supposed
That's
to.
what I'm
It's supposed to be.
It needs to be clear.
No. Yeah, that's the problem with the slide. It's not that it's wrong. It's that they're focusing on the call. They said it could be called after 5 years. So it is 5 times 2. But what's confusing is that they didn't make that clear. One would think that you expect a 20 here.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's not what, remember, we're now calculating the yield to call, not yield to maturity. It's the yield to the call option. They're telling you it can be called after 5 years. So it's 5 times 2. Does that make sense? You're not worried about the 10 years because it can be called after 5.
Well, no, I wasn't worried about that, I was worried about the statement of 10% semi-annual coupon.
Yeah.
Because it makes it sound like that 10% is the semi-annual already.
Oh.
Instead of it being 20%
I understand. No, you're
annual.
right. It should say a
It should say-
10% semi-annual paying coupon. That's how you should
Yeah.
state it. Okay, publisher issue, yeah, you're absolutely right. It does sound like it's a 10% it sounds like it's a 10% that you're earning every 6 months.
But 20% would be a lot. So,
Exactly, so,
Yeah,
Yeah.
common sense, I guess.
yeah. But you're right, what if it was like 5% here? You'll be a little more confused.
Yeah.
But I got it. Alright, so you're doing yield to call, not yield to maturity. So you're looking at your call. 5 years times 2, you have 10 periods. Your interest rate, okay, you're calculating that, right? That's what you're calculating. Your present value, we know, is $1,135.90. Your payment, we know, is $100 per year, but it's semi-annual, so we know it's $50 per period, right? With me? It's a 10% semi-annual coupon, so every period it's 5%. Remember we
Yeah.
divide the rate by 2?
Right.
Same way we multiply the periods of 5 years by 2 to get 10, we divide the rate from 10% because it's semi-annual paying to 5%.
Right, 2, that's
Exactly. So that 5% on a par value of 1,000 equals $50, right? So you fill it in. You have your number of periods is 10 because the 5 years to the call option times 2. You have your present value given of $1,135.80. You have your payment, which is the 10% divided by 2 on the par value of 1,000, gives you $50. And you have your future value, which is not par, it's the call premium, which is $1,050. So you put those in, okay? You do that, so we're looking for the rate, right?
Mhm.
So we first do our number of periods, we know is 10, right? We know our payment is 50, right? We know our present value, what was that? Crap, was it 1134?
Yep.
And
Or
our,
1135.90.
what was it?
1135.90.
And our, it's 150, right? That was the call premium. Okay. 3.77, yeah, 3.765. But this is the trick question. Because we used the semi-annual concept, we have to multiply our rate by 2 to get the annual return. Does that make sense? So this is the tricky part people mess up on. We are breaking this down to a semi-annual computation, right? We multiply our periods by 2. We calculate our payment, dividing it by 2 on a semi-annual basis. But when you end up with your rate, that means your rate is on a semi-annual basis. If you're answering the question, what is the required rate of return? Required rate to return are always on an annual basis. So you have to multiply by 2 to get to an annual basis, 7.53. Is that part clear? So your yield to call, you don't care if it's a 10-year bond. You care about when that call is exercisable. It mentioned in the problem that it's exercisable after 5 years. So that is the number you're focused on. Because it's a semi-annual coupon, remember, you're gonna multiply your number of years by 2 to get to the number of periods. The number of periods is 5 times 2, so it's 10, okay? Our rate that we are paying interest on, again, it's 10% per year, but they're saying it's a semi-annual paying bond. So our rate is 5%. Okay, the 5%, 5% times 1,000 is $50. Okay, remember what we said? Go ahead.
Oh, go.
Sorry?
So if your annual rate of, or if the interest rate, if the rate is 3.77% greater than,
The 5%?
then the 5%, then they'll initiate that call if it's after 5 years? Or how does that?
If the market rate is less than the coupon, you're absolutely right. So we didn't get there yet, but you're absolutely right.
Okay.
A company will want to exercise the call if that rate
It's 5%.
is less
Less
than
than
the
what-
coupon rate, because that means they're overpaying. So why
Right.
wouldn't they exercise it? That's
And
absolutely right.
and that's what that percentage is?
Yeah, that's,
Okay, okay.
that's exactly, basically we're calculating the market rate. So but I wanna make something clear. So again, you look at this problem, I want you to, when you read this type of problem, first of all, I want you to focus on how often they're paying interest. So you know, if you see semi-annual, you need to do some math around your parameters. So you know if it's, in this case, it's a call, so you're gonna look at when it can be exercised. So they're telling you it can be exercised after 5 years. So it's not 5 years, you're looking at periods, right? When you look at the formula, it doesn't say years, it says N per, that means number of periods. Your number of periods is not 5 years, it's 10 periods because it's paying interest twice, okay? Then the next field, it's telling you what is the interest payment, okay? Remember, when it comes to payment, you're looking at a bond, the payment should be nothing more than the coupon rate and the par value relationship, right? It's the payment you're contractually receiving. So because this is semi-annual and it's a 10% bond, that means every 6 months you're earning 5%. So you wanna make your payment calculate based off of 5% times the par value. So your payment is $50, 5% of 1,000, right? Then you get to the present value that they give you. They're giving you $1,135, okay? That's what the bond is worth. Then telling you the call, remember, what you're getting at the end is not par, because it's a call premium. They're giving you a little more because they have to incentivize you to go into the contract with the risk that they're gonna call the bond. So they're not gonna give you 1,000, they're gonna give you 1,050. So that is your maturity value. So you fill in those parameters and you get to a rate of 3.77, but you're not answering on a semi-annual basis. You wanna do that times 2, so your answer should be, your answer should be 7.53%. and that's what it is, okay? I know it's a lot, but I'm just trying to implant at least the foundation, so when you're going through the slides, you know, you start recollecting what's going on. Again, you have the summary to really bring all the thoughts back together. So to your point, which is an excellent one, if you bought bonds, would you be more likely to earn the yield to maturity or the yield to call? Okay? So as we said, if the coupon rate is greater than the market rate, which you calculated, right? Then the company can raise money by selling new bonds which only pay 7.53. So the company can replace bonds that are paying $100 per year with bonds that only pay $75 per year. So if you're an investor, you damn well better expect that there will be a call because your rate is less than the market rate, okay? So that's the point here. So again, yield to call, expect to earn yield to call on premium bonds and the yield to maturity on par and discount bonds, okay?
So what do you mean by 7.5% not yield to month? YTM equals 8%?
Right. And another thing here, in general, if a bond sells at a premium, that means the coupon rate is greater than the market rate, so a call is likely. Okay, I need you to understand that. So if a bond is selling at a premium, the coupon rate is greater than the market rate, so you should expect a call to happen, okay? Okay, the rest is pretty much terminology. You can see here, like, there's very little math involved, but let's just go over very quickly the concepts. I think Sabrina's ready to go.
Okay, I'm staying. You didn't about that? I don't know.
What was that?
No, you said it's.
Default risk premium and liquidity premium, okay? Each one of them is stipulated on the slides. So real risk-free rate is basically the inflation adjusted rate that you can expect on a riskless security. So that's something maybe you can expect from a short-term treasury bill. Inflation premium, bond spreads, default premium, liquidity premium. You can look at the summary sheet for that. But remember we talked about spreads, right? We said that a highly rated security, you can expect to have a lower default percentage than a lower risk security. So if you're in the junk bond category such as double B, single B, and triple C,
I remember seeing it, that's what that was.
your default risk, look at the default risk of triple C, 36% default risk within 5 years. If you're taking a chance at 36%, you don't get your money back, what kind of rate would you expect?
That's to be low.
30.
Much higher rate.
30%.
I thought, oh my bad, I meant that's not what I meant. I thought that it was a low risk rate.
Yeah, it's it's high risk and it's a low credit rate.
I mean, there's not much. Like if you lose money, it's not too much money that you put into it that you care about.
Well, that depends. That's separate and apart. Like the amount of money you put in is dependent on the company and the par value. This is just showing you that there's a good chance that a low rated security can default and a highly rated security. So you feel safer investing with the AAA, AA.
Right.
These are called investment grade bonds. These are highly regarded by a credit agency such as Moody's or the S&P or whatever. Yeah.
This whole thing, I always associate this with The Big Short, that movie.
Yeah, exactly.
He's
Yep.
playing Django with AAA's, he's like, they're shit.
Yep.
Sorry.
So, again, default risk, you want to stay away from the junk bonds, all right? These are very high risk. And then it's just, we already kind of discussed this. But
Are they supposed to let you know they're supposed to be junk bonds before you go in?
yeah, they're rated. So,
Okay. So
again,
if you see B and C's, you want to stay away from pretty much.
well, it depends what your appetite is.
Sure.
If you can secure a high rate that can more than, say they don't default, say they're not the 36%, but they're the 64%, which is a good chance you can get your money back. And on top of that, you got a very good interest rate. But on the other side, you might not even get your principal back.
Gotcha.
So it's a risk that if you're willing to take it or not. Bond ratings and bond spreads, as we mentioned, the spreads are usually less with higher rated securities, they're lower with high rated securities and higher with the junk bonds, right? So look at that spread, 10.46% spread. That's a premium that you have to pay basically for having a junk bond. Okay, factors that affect the default risk. So when credit agencies assign a rating to a bond, they look at many financial ratios, right? No one cares about the personality of management, they care about the bottom line figures, if they're over leveraged, if they have the liquidity protection, if they can cover their interest, debt service. So they look at debt ratio, coverage ratio, you know, everything we had in our quiz last time. EBITDA coverage ratios, interest coverage ratios, profitability ratios, current ratios. All the, remember current ratios, we were talking about the, liquidity ratio or the, you know, all those. So they analyze the credibility of a firm based off ratio analysis. You also look at debt to capital, right? You see that the higher rated bonds have a lower debt to capital than the junk bonds. Look at this junk bond, it has a debt to capital of 113%. That means they have more debt than equity from stockholders, okay? Those, you know, AAA, that means they have very little debt relative to the equity of the stockholders, okay? So they're not over leveraged, these are, junk bonds are over leveraged.
So companies that have like, collection agencies,
Mhm.
they have a lot of, when they buy the debt, bad debt, this company kind of the same concept?
I mean, usually, yeah, they're in the high risk business, that's exactly what they do, yeah.
So,
They're in high risk. Also another high risk is mezzanine debt. I think I mentioned this one time. Like, say, you're looking to, say you're working with you're a big firm and you're looking to buy $100 or $1 billion property. Usually you want a loan to value of 8%, right?
Yeah.
At most. If someone's lending you money, the most they'll want to lend you is 80%. Because if they lend you more, there's too much risk for them because the value of the property, if it goes down, they might not recoup their $800 million.
Gotcha.
So what ends up happening is, you say you don't have $200 million in cash to make up the rest of the 20%. What you can do is take out something called a mezzanine loan. These are high risk lenders that look for people like you that need to get that additional 10%, you might not have all the cash, and they'll lend you a loan at a much, much higher interest rate, because it's much riskier because they're subordinate to the mortgage.
Is that like mortgage insurance?
No, mortgage insurance is like, it's by the same mortgaging company,
right.
and they're doing it because you don't have the 20% equity. This is different because even if say they put a cap of 80%, right? They don't want to lend you more. What ends up happening if you're in a really big business and you need another loan, then another lender, it's a different lender, comes in and gives you an additional loan, but that loan is secondary to the mortgage.
Gotcha.
They're not first.
Yeah.
So the only way they're willing to do that for you is if I charge you, say, 2 times what you paid on the mortgage. That's called the mezzanine debt.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right, and factors that affect bond ratings. Remember we talked about secured versus unsecured. Obviously, secured would have a much higher rating, right? Because it has collateral. Senior versus subordinate, like I just said. Senior would be the mortgage. Subordinate would be the mezzanine debt because they're subordinate to the mortgage, senior mortgage, right?
So it's like first lender and second lender.
Exactly. Guarantee provisions, sinking fund provisions, debt maturity, all that factors the bond rating. Earning stability, regulatory environment, potential product liability, accounting policies. And the rest, honestly, like the rest, it's nothing that we haven't really covered. You can, go through it. Bankruptcy is very, very, we can talk about that right now. Well, you have 2 main versions of bankruptcy. You have Chapter 11, which is known as reorganization. You have your Chapter 7 that's known as liquidation. So when a company wants Chapter 11, creditors actually prefer Chapter 7. And I'll tell you why. So if a company can't meet its obligations, it files under Chapter 11. They don't want to go out of business. They're trying to come up with a plan that can appease some of its creditors so it can stay alive, right? So what this does is it temporarily stops the creditors from foreclosing and taking all their assets and shutting down the business. What ends up happening is a judge is usually, put in charge, and he or she gives the company 120 days to make up a reorganization plan.
Trump was smart then.
Why?
He filed like, what, 10 times of bankruptcy?
Smart is a very strong word. Alright.
But you know the system after 10 times, you gotta know about heart,
Why
huh?
don't you say savvy?
Yeah.
Say savvy then.
It's savvy.
Manipulative. Alright, so the court appoints a trustee, usually a judge, but a trustee to supervise the reorganization, making sure that the company is doing what it should be doing within 120 days, and management usually stays in control. So the company is still itself, but it's coming up with the let's get better plan, right? And a trustee is appointed by the court to supervise that. So a company must demonstrate in its reorganization plan that it's worth more alive than dead. That's very important. It needs to show that there is a viable option to stay alive and that there, you know, it can be worth more than dead. Otherwise, that judge will order liquidation under chapter 7. Chapter 7 is,
They're taking everything.
Uh,
To put the
goodbye.
pants on your butt.
So in chapter 7, the company is liquidated and then there's a priority payment list. Of course, who would you expect to be first?
IRS.
Actually, IRS is up there, but not first. It's property taxes, right? Property taxes, then you have the secured creditors, you have the trustees' costs, you have expenses after bankruptcy filings, you have wages and unpaid benefit contributions, unsecured customer deposits, taxes, unfunded pension liabilities, unsecured creditors, preferred stock, common stock.
Wow.
So,
Of course, common stock
I
is
thought
a
the
bond.
IRS be first.
so if we said that unsecured creditors usually never get anything,
You don't
do you
get
think the
nothing.
preferred and common would get anything?
No.
No,
Absolutely not, because remember we said, preferred and common, those are the equity. Equity is known as a residual interest holder in the company. Residual meaning you take your assets,
Yeah.
you take the liabilities, the difference goes to the equity. If the assets came and cover the liabilities, there's negative equity. That means the stockholders don't get anything.
Wow.
The value of the stock is zero, okay? Okay, so in a liquidation, the unsecured creditors generally get zero. This makes them more willing to participate in the reorganization plan. That's what they want. They don't want liquidation because they know they'll get nothing on it. They want to hopefully recoup their money by keeping the company alive, even though their claims are greatly scaled back. Various groups of creditors vote on the reorganization plan. If both the majority of creditors and judge approve, the company emerges from bankruptcy with lower debts, reduced interest charges, and a chance for success. Okay, that is it. So I'll send out some details.